The sun was burning low in the sky when Ned Stark rode through the quiet woods outside King's Landing. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was supposed to be back in the Red Keep, going through old papers, playing the hand of the king. But something had pulled him here. Maybe it was guilt, or maybe it was love. Robert had insisted on hunting, drinking, and fighting like the old days. Ned had seen the danger in it, but Robert had waved it off with a drunk laugh. Still, Ned had followed silently. He couldn't trust Varys, couldn't trust Littlefinger, and certainly not Cersei. The court was a nest of vipers, and Robert, his old friend, was the only reason he hadn't already walked away. As he rode deeper into the woods, he heard a sound. Not the usual birds or animals. It was loud breathing, angry snorting, then a scream. Ned kicked his horse and charged toward it. He reached the clearing in seconds and saw Robert on the ground, struggling to get up. A massive wild boar, tusks stained with blood, was preparing to charge again. Robert's spear lay broken beside him. His armor was twisted, and his leg was bleeding badly. "Robert!" Ned shouted and jumped off his horse. The boar turned to face him. Ned didn't wait. He grabbed the spear from his saddle and ran straight at the beast. With a loud cry, he thrust the spear into the boar's neck, using all his weight to drive it deep. The creature thrashed, then fell. Robert was panting hard but alive. "You stubborn fool," Ned muttered, kneeling beside him. "You almost died chasing your damn wine." Robert grinned, blood on his lip. "And now you've ruined a perfectly good hunt." Ned laughed, "Despite everything. Let's get you home, Your Grace." They made it back to King's Landing before nightfall. Master Pycelle tended to Robert's wounds and said with surprise that he would survive. "He was lucky," the old man said. "A little deeper and that boar would have torn through his stomach. But luck had little to do with it. Ned had saved him. Word of the king's injury spread fast, but so did the truth. He was alive. Cersei came to visit him in his chambers, fake concern on her face. Robert didn't miss it. "You thought you'd be rid of me," he whispered when they were alone. "Didn't you?" Cersei froze. "You're tired." "Don't talk nonsense," Robert stared at her. "I remember the wine. Too strong, too much. You gave it to Lancel. You poisoned me." Cersei didn't answer. She didn't need to. Robert saw it in her eyes. The love was long dead. Now even respect had rotted away. Ned entered the room just as Cersei was leaving. Their eyes met. Cold and full of silent war, Robert turned to Ned. "You were right. About everything. I've been blind. I let the crown rot while I drank myself stupid." Ned sat beside him. "It's not too late, old friend." Robert nodded slowly. "You'll stay then? Help me fix this mess?" Ned looked down. "Aye, for now." But they both knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The Lannisters wouldn't sit quietly. Cersei had tasted power, and she wouldn't give it up without a fight. And there was something else, something dark. Ned still remembered what Jon Arryn had found before he died. He hadn't yet told Robert about Joffrey, about the truth of the boy's blood. But that time was coming, for now Robert was alive, king of the Seven Kingdoms. And with Ned Stark at his side, the game had changed. Forever. The mood inside the Red Keep changed after Robert returned alive. What was supposed to be a silent funeral had now turned into quiet tension. The Lannisters, especially Cersei, had begun to realize something they hadn't prepared for. Robert Baratheon was still breathing, and he wasn't the same lazy drunk they once controlled. He was angry. And worse, he was finally sober a week past. Robert's wounds were healing well, and his mind was clearer than it had been in years. Ned visited him daily, not as the Hand, but as a brother in arms. They spoke of old times, of Lyanna, of Rhaegar, and of war. But slowly, their talks turned to the present, to the rot spreading inside the kingdom. "I've been king in name only," Robert admitted one morning as he struggled to rise from bed, still sore. "Cersei rules behind my back. Littlefinger steals gold like it's his own. And Varys whispers like a ghost in every corner. You trusted the wrong people," Ned replied. "I trusted you," Robert said quietly. "And I ignored you. That ends now." That same day, Robert summoned the small council. The chamber was filled with tension. Varys stood with his hands folded. Littlefinger smirked in his usual sly way. Renly sat confused, and Pycelle looked half asleep. Only Ned stood with steel in his eyes. Robert limped in, helped by Sir Barristan. Everyone stood unsure of what mood the king was in. Robert waved a hand. "Sit down, all of you," he said gruffly. "We've got a kingdom to save or burn, depending on what I decide." Littlefinger chuckled. "Glad to see you alive, Your Grace. We feared the worst." Robert gave him a cold stare. "You hoped for the worst." The room went silent. Robert took his seat at the head of the table, leaning forward. "From this moment on, things are going to change. Starting with gold. Petter, you will open the books. Every coin, every debt. I want to see how deep your knife has cut into the crown's purse." Littlefinger's smile faded. "Of course, Your Grace. I've only ever served—" "Spare me," Robert snapped. "If I find you've stolen a copper, I'll hang you myself." Next he turned to Pycelle. "You drugged me. I don't care how long you've served the throne. I know weakness when I see it." "You're dismissed from the small council," the old man gasped, stumbling in shock. But Your Grace—" "You're not dead," Robert growled. "Be grateful." Then his eyes moved to Varys. "And you, Spider. If you whisper behind my back again, I'll cut out your tongue." Varys, ever calm, bowed deeply. "I serve the realm, Your Grace. I will do as you command." Robert leaned back. "Good." After the meeting, as the council left, only Ned and Robert remained. "That was bold," Ned said. "That was just the beginning," Robert replied. "Next, I want the truth. About my children." Ned went still. Robert continued. "I remember what you said before the hunt. About Jon Arryn, about the seed being strong. I see Joffrey now, and I see—" "Nothing of me. Nothing of the Baratheons." Ned looked away. "There's something I've been meaning to tell you." Robert stood up, though with some pain. "Tell me now." "I won't be lied to any more." Ned took a breath. "This was the moment that could break everything. Joffrey is not your son, nor a Myrcella or Tommen. They are Jaime Lannisters." Robert's face froze. It didn't change for several seconds. He blinked once, slowly. Then his fists clenched. "Cersei, she did this to me? To our house?" Ned nodded. Robert didn't say anything for a long time. Then he walked slowly to a table and poured himself wine, only a little. "Just one cup." He drank it down in silence. "She killed my dynasty," he said finally, softly. "She killed me years ago, I just didn't know it. What will you do?" Ned asked carefully. Robert looked up. His eyes were burning. "I'm going to burn the Lannisters from the Red Keep to the Rock. Every one of them." Ned stepped forward. "You'll start a war." Robert laughed bitterly. "The war never ended, Ned. We just paused it. Now we finish it." That night, Cersei found her bedchamber door locked. When she demanded entry, a Kingsguard told her, "The king says you are no longer queen." By morning, Jaime Lannister was arrested, and the realm was about to change. The bells of the Red Keep rang at sunrise. Not in celebration, not in mourning, but as a warning. Whispers ran like fire through the halls of King's Landing. "The Kingslayer has been arrested, Jaime Lannister, the Golden Lion, the Queen's twin, the man who murdered the last Targaryen king, now sat in chains beneath the Red Keep, his white cloak stained with dungeon dirt." The capital held its breath. Some thought it was a joke. Others waited for Tywin Lannister's fury to fall upon the city like a hammer, but Robert Baratheon didn't flinch. He held court that same day, sitting tall upon the Iron Throne, Ned Stark at his side. His legs still ached from the boar wound, but his mind was sharp. Sharper than it had been in years. Cersei Lannister didn't appear in court. She remained locked in her chambers, guarded by knights loyal to Robert. Joffrey tried to command them to let her out, yelling that he was the crown prince, but no one obeyed. For the first time in his life, the boy prince was truly powerless. Robert turned to Ned before court began. "I'll need your help to manage the fallout," he said, voice low. Ned looked troubled. "You've lit the wildfire, Robert. The realm may not survive it." "Then let it burn," Robert replied grimly. "So we can build something better from the ashes." As the nobles and lords of the court gathered, Robert stood and addressed them. "My lords," he began, voice echoing through the chamber. "There are truths that have been hidden, lies that have poisoned this court, but no more. I've discovered betrayal in my own house, in my own bed. Whispers spread like rats scurrying. I have removed Jaime Lannister from the Kingsguard. He sits in chains, accused of treason, accused of breaking sacred vows, and of bedding his own sister, the Queen. Gasps followed. Even hardened lords looked shaken. Robert continued, his tone cold. The children you thought were mine, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, are not of my blood. They are bastards, born of incest. The silence that followed was like the moment before a storm hits. Joffrey Baratheon is no true heir. And the Queen is no true wife. Renly, standing behind the throne, looked stunned. Varys raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Littlefinger wore a calm mask, too calm, and Pycelle, though removed from the council, had still managed to slither into the back of the chamber, white with shock. Robert turned to Ned. "Read the decree." Ned stepped forward and unrolled a parchment. His voice strong. By order of King Robert Baratheon, Joffrey Waters, Myrcella Waters, and Tommen Waters are to be stripped of all titles and claims. The Queen, Cersei Lannister, is to be held under house arrest until further trial. Jaime Lannister shall stand accused of treason, oath-breaking, and dishonouring the King's Guard. No applause followed. No cheers, only stunned silence. Then a voice rang out from the back. "This is madness." All heads turned. It was Lancel Lannister, young, foolish, and burning with Lannister pride. "You insult our house," he shouted. "You arrest a lord of Casterly Rock? You shame the Queen. My uncle Tywin will raze this city to the ground." Robert stood, full of rage. "Then let him come," he roared. "Let him bring fire and swords. I'll face him with truth in one hand and a warhammer in the other." The court broke into chaos. Nobles rushed out, others stayed to whisper and plan. Varys disappeared like smoke. Littlefinger quietly slipped away as well. But Robert remained still, eyes fixed on the iron throne beneath him, sharp, jagged, and as cold as the truth. That night, Ned visited the dungeons. Jaime Lannister sat in silence, blood dried around his lip. He looked up as Ned approached. "So it's true," Jaime said with a dry laugh. "You really did it. You saved Robert and ruined the game." "I did what was right," Ned replied. Jaime chuckled. "And now the realm will bleed for it." Outside the walls of King's Landing, birds were already flying west, ravens carrying news of scandal, shame, and rebellion. At Casterly Rock, Tywin Lannister would soon receive a message that his son was a prisoner, his daughter disgraced, and his grandchildren declared illegitimate, and Tywin was not the kind of man to let insults pass unanswered. War was coming, but this time it would begin not with a feast, but with truth. The raven reached Casterly Rock in the dead of night. Tywin Lannister stood in his war room, the letter in his hand, his golden eyes narrowing with every word. When he reached the end, where Robert's seal burned into the parchment, he didn't speak. He didn't scream. He didn't even blink. Instead, he turned to Sir Kevan. "Summon every bannerman. I want 20,000 men marching by dawn. Jaime will not rot in a cell while Robert plays judge and Ned Stark plays God. But father," Kevan said cautiously, "if we raise arms now, it means war. Open rebellion." Tywin's voice was like cold steel. "It already is war. They just haven't bled enough to know it yet." Back in King's Landing, Robert Baratheon was preparing for that very blood. He no longer drank heavily. No more brothels. No more lazy afternoons. The king who once fought on the Trident had returned, older, slower, but still dangerous. His orders came swift and merciless. "Double the guards on the gates," he told Ned. "No one enters or leaves without my word." "And Jaime?" Ned asked. Robert thought for a moment. "We try him publicly. Let the realm hear the truth. Let the Lannisters choke on their own sins." Ned hesitated. "A public trial could inflame tensions. Perhaps it's wiser to keep it quiet." Robert slammed his fist on the table. "Quiet, that's what we did for years, Ned. And what did that bring us? Bastards on my throne. A crown paid for in lies." Ned didn't argue further. But deep down, a storm was building. Robert wanted justice, but his justice was beginning to taste like vengeance. The city itself was changing too. Gold cloaks patrolled the streets in tighter formations. Lannister loyalists disappeared quietly, dragged into the black cells, or forced to kneel and swear new oaths. The small folk whispered in fear, not just of the king's wrath, but of what might come next. Inside her tower, Cersei Lannister sat by the window in silence. Her hair was unbraided, her eyes dull. Joffrey paced behind her like a caged dog. "They can't do this to you," he snarled. "They can't take my throne." Cersei said nothing. She hadn't spoken much since her arrest. "I'll kill them all," Joffrey continued. "I'll have the hound slit Ned Stark's throat. Enough!" Her voice was soft but firm. Joffrey stopped. She turned to him slowly. "We were fools, all of us. We thought Robert would die in the woods, and the crown would fall into our lap." Joffrey's face twisted. "He should have died." Cersei walked toward him and cupped his face. "You're not a king. Not anymore. But you can be, if we survive this." "How?" he whispered. She kissed his forehead gently, like a mother clinging to a lie. "Because your grandfather is coming." 2 days later, ravens arrived bearing grim news. Tywin Lannister had raised his banners and was marching east, fast and with fury. "He means to take Jaime by force," Renly said. "Pacing the war chamber," Robert growled. "Let him come. I'll hang him beside his son." Ned leaned on the table, looking at the map. "Tywin is not a fool. He'll avoid open battle unless he must. He'll strike at the Riverlands first, provoke a response and draw blood where it hurts most." Robert looked at him. "Then we strike first." "No," Ned said firmly. "You strike first, and you'll be the rebel king again. You want justice? Then let Tywin be the traitor. Let the realm see who breaks the peace." For a moment, Robert looked ready to argue, but then he nodded slowly. "Fine, one more letter, one more warning." He handed the task to Ned. The letter sent to Tywin was simple. "Lay down your arms. Surrender your son. Swear fealty to the crown or face the sword." Tywin never replied. Instead, 3 days later, the Riverlands burned. Sir Gregor Clegane, the Mountain, rode with fire and steel through innocent villages, leaving bodies as a message. Jaime or war? Robert's choice. When word reached the capital, Ned sat alone with Robert on the battlements of the Red Keep. "They've made their choice," Robert said quietly, watching the flames from afar. "Now we make ours." Ned looked out at the horizon, where the war hadn't yet reached but surely would. He remembered Winterfell, the snow. "His children, you start a war," Ned said softly. "You don't always get to finish it." Robert didn't answer. Below them the bells rang again, not for peace, but for war. The banners of House Lannister rose high across the Riverlands, red and gold, shimmering with fire and blood. Gregor Clegane's rampage left over a dozen villages in ashes, men butchered, women violated, children orphaned. The River Lords cried out for justice, and Robert had no choice but to answer. King's Landing turned from a seat of power into a fortress. Blacksmiths worked day and night, gold cloaks drilled in the square. Rumors spread that Tywin was marching not just to rescue Jaime, but to take the capital by force. Robert held council in the throne room now, not behind closed doors. He wanted the court to see war being built openly. "The mountain rides under Tywin's banner," Robert declared. "That makes Tywin a traitor. I will crush him beneath my heel." Renly stepped forward, fire in his voice. "Then give the order, brother. March west and burn Casterly Rock to the ground." But Ned shook his head. "March west and we abandon the capital. Tywin is baiting us. He wants the crown unguarded." Robert looked between them. "Then what do we do?" "Send a host to defend the Riverlands," Ned said. "One strong enough to fight, but not the royal army. Keep the throne safe. Let Tywin bleed first." Robert nodded. "And who leads this host?" Silence followed. The obvious name hung in the air. Ned didn't want it. He hated war now, especially war caused by betrayal, but Robert spoke it aloud. "Eddard Stark, ride for the Riverlands." Ned met his eyes. "I serve the realm. I will go." The next morning, as Ned prepared to leave, he visited the dungeons once more. Jaime Lannister sat slouched against the wall, his golden hair dirty, eyes bloodshot. Still, his arrogance hadn't faded. "Stark," he drawled. "Come to gloat again?" "No," Ned replied. "I came to warn you." "Tywin has declared war," Jaime smirked. "Then he's doing his duty. Unlike you, I never abandoned family." Ned stepped closer. "You speak of honor, but you broke every vow you swore. Kingsguard, brother, man." Jaime leaned forward, chained but defiant. "Do you think I regret killing the Mad King? That butcher? He was going to burn the whole city. Women, children. I stopped him." Ned's eyes narrowed. "And then you replaced him with a lie. You raised bastards and sat silent while your sister ruled." Jaime laughed. "The game was never about truth, Stark. It was always about survival. And you're about to learn what it costs." Outside the city gates, Ned Stark led a column of 5,000 north, knights, footmen and archers from the Crownlands and Stormlands. Sir Barristan stayed behind with Robert, though he begged to ride beside his king's oldest friend. Sansa cried when Ned said goodbye. Arya didn't cry. She just hugged him tight and asked him to teach her one last sword move. He did. "I'll return," Ned promised them. "I swear it." Behind him the city loomed like a stone trap. In front, war awaited. Back in the Red Keep, Robert faced his own problem, one that came in the form of a whisper. Varys visited his chambers late at night, robed in silence, speaking softly. "Your Grace," he said, "and there is a matter you've left untouched." Robert raised an eyebrow. "If you're here to lecture me about killing my false children, spare me. I've already removed them from the line of succession." Varys shook his head. "It's not about them. It's about the true heir." Robert's face hardened. "Daenerys Targaryen," Varys continued. "She lives still in the east. Her followers grow by the day. And now with the realm in chaos." "She's a girl," Robert muttered. "A child." Varys stepped forward. "So was Rhaegar when he was trained to kill. So was you when you took the throne. A dragon may sleep, but it never dies." Robert was silent for a long time. Then, without looking up, he said, "Do what you must." 2 days later, a ship left Blackwater Bay, bound for Pentos. A man with a quiet face and a poisoned dagger was aboard. The game was no longer just in Westeros. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen, now carrying her unborn child, had no idea that her life had been weighed, measured and marked for death. And in the Riverlands, Ned Stark crossed the burning ruins of yet another village, his men sickened by the smell of charred flesh. He knew then that this wasn't just rebellion. It was the beginning of a great unraveling. The realm was cracking open, and all the lies buried beneath it were crawling to the surface. Ned Stark had seen war before, real war. Not the games played in courts or whispered in council chambers, but the raw kind. Mud, blood, and broken bodies on a scorched field. The Riverlands reminded him of the rebellion. Burned-out homes, children crying over corpses. Villagers, too, afraid to speak. But this war was different. This one wasn't for a kingdom. It was for the soul of the realm, and no one, not even him, would leave it clean. They found the first Lannister raiding party near the Mummers Ford. Gregor Clegane had already moved on, but he left behind 20 men, drunk, armed, and covered in gore. Ned's scouts surrounded them at dawn. No parley, no warning. Ned ordered his men forward. The Knights of the Crownlands hit hard and fast, and the Lannister men didn't stand a chance. It was done in minutes. The dirt drank the blood quickly, but Ned didn't celebrate. He only looked at the youngest man among them, no older than Robb, lying dead in the grass, red cloak soaked dark. And he felt nothing but cold. That night, in the quiet of his command tent, Ned wrote to Robert, "This is not war. This is slaughter. If Tywin wants blood, he will find it. But we must not let the realm forget who spilled the first drop." He sealed it with wax and handed it to a trusted rider. But by the time the message reached the Red Keep, the truth was already twisting into poison. Back in King's Landing, chaos bloomed beneath the surface. Rumors spread faster than wildfire that Ned Stark was burning villages, hanging lords, slaughtering innocents, that Robert was too weak to stop him, that Stannis was sailing for Dragonstone with ships to claim the throne, that Renly was plotting with the Tyrells, and worst of all, that the Queen was not as powerless as she seemed. Cersei had not wept. She had not begged. She had waited, and now she moved. That night, a gold-cloaked captain named Joss Stillwater disappeared. The next morning, Sir Meryn Trant was found dead in the training yard, throat cut clean. And in the silence that followed, a new whisper crept through the court. Cersei still has her lions. Robert slammed his cup against the table when he heard. She's in her tower. Under guard! Varys merely raised a thin brow. Your Grace, power is not where someone sits. It's who listens when they speak. Robert turned to Sir Barristan. Double the watch. If another guard fails me, I'll start cutting off hands. But it was already too late. In the shadows, Littlefinger had returned to his games, this time not to climb, but to survive. He began feeding both sides, selling secrets like wine. To Cersei, he said, your father needs time. Buy it with fear. To Robert, he whispered, you need the people on your side. Give them a spectacle, a trial, a burning. And to Renly, he said nothing, but a quiet deal was struck over wine and gold. And suddenly Highgarden's banners began to shift. Far across the narrow sea, in Pentos, the man with the dagger finally found Daenerys. She was heavier now, her belly round with the child of Drogo, her hair longer, her spirit stronger, but she still smiled like a girl when she sang to her unborn son. The assassin came at night, a wine merchant with a cart full of sweet red drink, just as ordered. But Ser Jorah was watching. He knocked the goblet from her hand just as the poison was poured. He ran the dagger man through, leaving him choking on his own blood. Daenerys wept that night, not out of fear, but fury. They sent a killer, she whispered. And the child wasn't even born yet. Ser Jorah knelt beside her. You have enemies across the sea, Khaleesi. But you also have dragons. She looked at the eggs. They hadn't cracked, not yet. But she could feel something stirring in them, something ancient. I will not run anymore, she said, eyes blazing. When my son is born, I will come for them. Back in Westeros, Tywin Lannister had moved south. Robb Stark, barely 17, had raised the banners in the north upon hearing of his father's march and the burning of the Riverlands. The lords of the Vale stayed quiet, but not out of peace. Their eyes were on each other, waiting for the first to move. And in the center of it all, Robert Baratheon stood like a man caught between a sword and a wildfire. He held the throne, but not the court. He wore the crown, but it weighed heavier than ever. In private, he confessed to Barristan, if I die now, Ned will be hunted. My son will be a corpse, and the realm will belong to wolves and lions. Barristan only nodded. We must win this war, Your Grace, he said. Robert looked toward the north, where smoke curled in the air. No, he whispered. We must survive it. The sky above the Trident had turned grey, heavy with ash and clouds. Ned Stark rode through the aftermath of another battle, a small one, but brutal all the same. Tywin Lannister's men had fallen back toward Harrenhal, but not before setting fire to every field they passed. Smoke choked the air. Trees burned like torches. The Riverlands were dying. Ned walked among the corpses, both theirs and his. He saw a boy barely 12, his throat slit open beside a broken spear. He saw a Lannister knight with an arrow through his eye, and a letter from his wife still clutched in his hand. He turned away. This was not justice. This was butchery dressed in armor. Later that night, as his camp rested, Ned summoned his most loyal men. Sir Roderick Cassel, Jory's cousin, Lord Vance and Lord Piper from the Riverlands, and a grizzled bannerman named Gawain. I fear we are no longer fighting for peace, Ned said. We are fighting to keep Robert's anger from turning into wildfire, Roderick frowned. Do you still trust him? Ned didn't answer right away. I trust the man I rode with years ago, he finally said. But now, he's more king than man. And that crown is burning through him, Piper leaned forward. And what of the heir? If not Joffrey, then who? That question had haunted Ned for weeks. He had thought of Stannis, cold, lawful, and loyal to the letter of the law. But the lords whispered of Renly, young and charming, with friends in Highgarden and gold to spare. Stannis has the better claim, Ned said. But Renly has the better smile. Which wins a war? Vance asked. Neither, Ned replied. Not without swords behind them. In King's Landing, the Red Keep had become a hall of secrets. Robert sat alone more often now, wine in hand, staring at the Iron Throne like it mocked him. He had sent ravens to Stannis, demanding he return to court. Stannis had replied only once, "The throne has no place for bastards or liars. I will come when truth sits where it belongs." Robert crushed the letter in his hand and threw it into the fire. That same day, Cersei sent a message of her own, not to Robert, but to her father Tywin. The letter read, "I am your daughter. My son is your blood. If you do not come for us now, we will be forgotten. But if you bring fire with you, we will take back what is ours, and more." Tywin did not send a raven in return. He sent Sir Adam Marbrand and 12,000 men. At Harrenhal, Tywin received the letter from Robert's hand, the final warning. "Surrender, Jaime. Lay down your arms. Swear fealty." Tywin read it silently. Then he burned it. "I do not kneel," he told his captains. "Not to Robert Baratheon. Not to anyone. We will take back my son, and we will make the stag bleed." He ordered his army to split. One half would press toward the crossroads inn to bait the crown forces. The other would move south, toward King's Landing, hidden under night and fog. But Tywin's plans had a shadow, one he hadn't counted on. Robb Stark had crossed the Neck, with 15,000 Northmen behind him. In the Vale, word reached Lysa Arryn days later. She shrieked at her maester and slammed the raven cage shut. Ned's warning had come too late. The Vale could no longer sit idle. Blood had spilled at their borders, and lords began to pressure Lysa to act. But she refused. She clung to her son, whispering that wolves and lions would tear each other apart, and the Eyrie would remain untouched. But whispers reached Petyr Baelish, who had long since returned to the Vale. He listened carefully, and then wrote 2 letters. One went to Renly Baratheon, the other to the Queen. By the end of that week, Renly Baratheon arrived in Highgarden. He wore green and gold now, not black and red. The Tyrells welcomed him like a son. Mace Tyrell raised his cup at the feast. "To King Renly," he said, smiling. His daughter, Margaery, sat beside Renly, her hand in his. "Together," Renly said quietly to her, "we can win the realm." She smiled sweetly. "And what is a realm but people waiting to be told who to follow?" Back at the Trident, Ned Stark received news that chilled his blood. Tywin marches toward the capital. Robb rides from the Twins. Renly has claimed the throne. And in the east, Daenerys Targaryen's child has been born. With silver hair and screaming lungs, a dragon had been born again. The storm was no longer coming. It was already here. The banners of war rose on every horizon, north, south, east, west. The realm was no longer one kingdom. It was a battlefield divided by lions, wolves, dragons, and stags. In the center sat King's Landing, ringed by stone walls and sharpened steel, bracing for the firestorm marching toward it. King Robert stood atop the battlements of the Red Keep, the wind slapping his face. His once dark beard was now streaked with grey, and his armor fit tighter than it used to. But his eyes still burned, not with pride, not even with fury, with failure. Below, his men prepared for siege. Sir Barristan drilled the Goldcloaks, who looked more like fishmongers than soldiers. The walls were manned, but morale was cracking. Robert knew Tywin would be there within days. And Renly, his own brother, had crowned himself king in Highgarden. "I should have died in that damn forest," he muttered. Ned Stark stood beside him. "No," he said softly. "You were meant to live, to see the truth you ignored for years." Robert gave a bitter laugh. "And what did that truth buy us, Ned? War on all sides? A kingdom that hates itself?" "You still have a chance," Ned replied. "Call a great council. Step down. Let the lords decide who wears the crown. It's the only path left that doesn't end in fire." Robert turned to him sharply. "You want me to give up the throne, after all I bled for it?" "I want you to save the realm," Ned said, steady. "Before there's nothing left to rule." Robert didn't answer. Not then. That night, under torchlight, the first siege horns blew. Tywin Lannister had arrived. His host of 20,000 covered the King's Road, armored in gold. Siege towers rolled forward. Catapults were wheeled into place. The Riverlands had burned. Now Tywin meant to burn the capital. From his tent he sent one message: "Release my son. Return my daughter. or die behind your walls." Robert read the note and ripped it in half, but even as he prepared for war, another rider arrived, this one bearing a seal of golden roses. Renly Baratheon's army had moved from Highgarden and now approached from the south. Not in support, but in ambition, the stag now faced two enemies. The city panicked. In the throne room the council met for the final time. "Renly offers a deal," Varys said. "Step down, name him heir, and he will protect the city against Tywin," Robert scoffed. "So he pretends to save me after robbing me." "He has the Tyrells," Littlefinger added. "And the Reach, that's 100,000 men. More food than we could grow in a year." Barristan folded his arms. "And what does he offer the realm? Charm? Secrets? A pretty crown for a pretty liar?" Ned looked to Robert. "We cannot fight both sides. If you stay king, the realm dies in your name. But if you end it—" Robert stared at the Iron Throne, the melted swords, the sharp edges, the lies it fed men. "I was never a king," he said. "Just a hammer with a crown." Then slowly he stood. "Write the declaration," he said to Ned. "I step down. A great council shall decide the true heir. And until then—" "The hand rules," Ned froze. "You mean—" "Yes," Robert said. "I'm naming you Protector of the Realm." The next morning, Robert Baratheon stood before the gates of King's Landing, unarmed and alone. He rode forward, his crown in hand. He stopped between the camps of Tywin and Renly and held it up. "The war ends now," he shouted. "I am Robert of House Baratheon. I won this throne, and now I give it up before it swallows us all." The lord stared in shock. Then he dropped the crown into the dirt and turned away. Ned Stark ruled as Protector. His first act: free Jaime Lannister and return him to Tywin as a gesture of peace, under oath that Tywin would return to Casterly Rock and not march again. Tywin agreed reluctantly. His second act: name Stannis Baratheon the rightful heir, per the laws of the land, but offer Renly a seat on the council, and a political marriage to Margaery Tyrell that would unite the Reach and Stormlands peacefully. Renly refused the throne. To everyone's surprise, "I only wanted a king who would listen," he said, smiling thinly. "Now I have one." And his third act: he sent a raven across the sea to Daenerys Targaryen, not with a dagger, but with an invitation. "Westeros is changing," the letter read, "and your blood is part of it. Come if you seek peace or justice." The realm did not return to peace overnight. Many still plotted, many still hated. But for the first time in a generation, the Iron Throne sat empty, and the kingdom breathed. Robert returned to Storm's End, where he lived in quiet shame, drinking less, hunting more, and telling the same story over and over. "I had it all, and I almost burned it down." And Ned? He ruled not as a king, but as a father to a wounded realm, with the weight of truth on his back, and the ghosts of war whispering in his ears. But he had done what no man in Westeros had done before. He had ended the game, not by winning, but by refusing to play.